We're now going to the presentation by Evangelos, who's going to be talking about the forensic analysis. And like I said, I can never pronounce this correctly. So Evangelos, hopefully you're going to educate me during your presentation, because I always murder this pronunciation. So I'm not even going to embarrass myself. But over to you. I'm really excited and looking forward to your presentation. Like I said, specifically because the more devices that are out there in the sort of Internet of Things ecosystem, the more potential source of evidence that we have. So over to you, and I'm looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Evangelos Dragonas, and I hope you can hear me. And today I will talk about the forensic analysis of Xiaomi IoT Ecosystem. So it is Xiaomi. Before I begin, let me introduce myself. So I live in Greece, where I work as a digital forensic examiner. Currently, I am pursuing my PhD in the area of IoT forensics at the University of Piraeus here in Athens. In my free time, I conduct DFIR research, which I typically share at my research blog, namely atroposforensics.com. I'm feeling honored to announce that a research article I wrote with two colleagues of mine, Alexandros Vasilaras and Dimitrios Katsoulis, is now one of the 3 finalists for the award of the DFIR Article of the Year category at this year's Forensic Forecast Awards. If you haven't done it already, please cast your votes at the link you see in my slide. And with that, let us begin by talking about Xiaomi. Xiaomi is one of the world's biggest manufacturers when it comes to smartphones and IoT solutions. As you will see in the following slide, Xiaomi's IoT devices are becoming more and more likely to appear in our smart home investigations. Also, Xiaomi is really popular in Europe, and it's coming to the US as well. Now let's see some Xiaomi IoT statistics. As you can see, Xiaomi closed the fourth quarter of 2020 with more than 324 million IoT connected devices. This number is really big, and it continues to grow up to this day. But what IoT devices does this number include? Well, Xiaomi and third-party manufacturers with which Xiaomi has partnered, like Mia, Akara, Yeelight, Vomi, and more, together they offer a plethora of IoT solutions that include sensors, smart lighting, household appliances, healthcare, air treatment, personal transportations, and many more categories. Out of all of these categories, I chose a representative subset of IoT products for my research, which I will present you in the following section, where we'll discuss the equipment I used and my setup. So in this research, I used the following IoT devices. In this presentation, I will present you the artifacts obtained for the forensic analysis of the devices that appear in the red boxes. As a smartphone device in my research, I used the Xiaomi Redmi Note 6 Pro, which had Android 9 operating system and was rooted with Magisk. As you can see, all the IoT devices of this research were grouped based on their communication protocol. In order to control all of these devices, I used the Xiaomi corresponding Android application, Mi Home application. I tested several versions of this application, with the latest being the one you see in my slide, which also happens to be the latest that is available for download from Google Play Store. Of course, both the application and certain IoT devices pull and push data to Xiaomi Cloud Services and my Mi account. Now, this is my home. All the IoT devices of this research were assigned to my home and transformed it into a smart home. Those devices were used for a period of 2 months approximately. I used the smartphone application to control all of these devices, and from time to time, I tweaked some of their settings in order to perform a more complete forensic analysis. Now let's talk about the evidence extraction. Before extracting the evidence, we need first to identify all the potential sources of evidence in this IoT ecosystem. Of course, the first source of evidence that comes in mind is the smartphone application, Mi Home application. Secondly, we have the Xiaomi Cloud Services and my Mi account. Following, we have the IoT devices themselves. Not all of these devices, but some of them store evidentiary data that could be useful in our investigations. So following, we have the local API. Actually, this source of evidence only applies to Xiaomi's Mi Smart Speaker, as this device operates in a similar way to Google Home devices. And last but not least, we have the smart home's network traffic, which can be really useful, especially if we're conducting a cybercrime investigation where some of these IoT devices might get involved. In this presentation, I will present you the artifacts obtained from the forensic analysis of the smartphone application. In order to extract the smartphone application data, I used the following method. I turned on the airplane mode on my smartphone. I didn't clear the application hash of Mi Home application, and I used ADB commands to retrieve the smartphone application data. As a side note here, the smartphone was rooted, and this is why those commands were easily successful. However, all the Bluetooth IoT devices of this research had to be examined live through Mi Home application, and that required both Internet and Bluetooth connection. Moving on to the forensic analysis part. Before presenting you the artifacts of my forensic analysis, I would like to give you a quick glance at the Mi Home application. So when we launch this application, when we launch Mi Home application, we will get a smart home overview. We will see the current status of IoT devices. So which devices are online or offline, which of them are turned on or off. We can also see which IoT devices are assigned to each room, and therefore, which rooms of the smart home are in use. We can also retrieve logs from specific IoT devices, but that would require Internet connection, as only few of these records are stored locally, as we can see here. We can also find information about the automation system of our smart home. So we can see the list of current scenes, which of them are enabled or disabled. And if we tap on a scene, we can see its configuration. So which rooms and IoT devices does it involve? Again, we can retrieve logs of each scene, but that information would require Internet connection. Lastly, we can retrieve the profile information of the account that is linked with the Mi Home application. But once again, this information will require Internet connection. And with that, let's dive into the artifacts that remain after the forensic analysis. I will begin with the artifacts that are related to the application itself. So under the serprefs directory, there is a one-track-pref.xml file. Within that file, we will find the first timestamp of this application. And we can also find the latest version that is installed. Under the other two files, which can be found under the files and serprefs directory, respectively, we can find where the Xiaomi cloud server is located. In this case, it's Germany or Deutschland. And we can also recover our smart home unique ID. Now, artifacts that are related to the account that is linked with the Mi Home application. Under the database directory, there is a SQLite database named MioDB. Under the share user table, we will find the email, nickname, phone number, the share timestamp, and the user unique ID of the account that is linked with the Mi Home application, of course. So what does the share timestamp means? Now, we can share the control of our smart home with other Mi accounts. And in that field, we will see when this particular user was added to our smart home. So as an example, here I added another account, Mi account, to my smart home, and here is a timestamp when this user was added. Another important file can be found under the serprefs directory and ends with the user unique ID. That's what distinguishes this file. Now, this file isn't always populated. So at some versions of this application, it gets populated. In other versions of this application, it does not. But if you find this file populated, then you can recover a really important information, which is when the account that is linked with the application was created. Now, this is how the personal information look from within the application. Moving on, let's see what can we recover about our smart home. Now, again, under the serprefs directory, there is another XML file named home room v manager sp. Within that file, we will find our smart home unique ID, our smart home name and geolocation, if location authorization was granted during the first launch of this application, the smart home share status, which isn't always accurate, and we can also retrieve information about our smart home rooms, including the room name, the room ID, when was each room created, which IoT devices are assigned to it, and its share status. Next, let's see what we can get about the smart home's automation system. Now, our favorite directory, surprise directory, has another file of importance. Now, this file begins with the MD5 hash value of the user unique ID, and then followed by scene list cast.xml. Within that file, we will find information about current scenes. So we can retrieve the scene number, the scene ID, the user unique ID, the scene name, the creation timestamp of each scene, and the settings of those scenes. So which IoT devices are involved in each scene, the conditions that needs to be met in order for the scene to get triggered, and the action list that follows the scene, and its time span. As a point of consideration here, no scene logs were present within this file, as this information requires Ethernet connection, and it is unavailable where on airplane mode. Now let's see how this information looks like from within the application. As you can see, here are the scene names, and if we tap on a scene, we can see its configuration. Now, its conditions and its action list. And now, let's see what artifacts remained related to the IoT devices themselves. Now, under this directory, we will find one or more folders. Now, each folder here represents an IoT device type. If we open this folder, for example, within we will find a numerical subfolder and a data subfolder. If we open the first subfolder, within we will find files that reveal the IoT device type that this folder refers to. So in this case, this folder is related to the motion sensor devices. Now, if we open the data subfolder, within we will find one or more subfolders. What does this mean? This means that we have one or more devices of this device type assigned to our smart home. And if we open the first folder, so in this case, we have two motion sensors assigned to my smart home. If we open the first folder, sorry about that. Now, if we open the first subfolder, we will find a data subfolder, and within that, the config XML file. This file is the most important file that we can get our hands on and is related to the IoT devices themselves. This file is the device log file. Now, let's explore those config XML file for the IoT devices of my research. For the Mi motion sensor, the Mi door and window sensor, and the wireless switch, for these devices, the config XML files are fixed in size, about 3 kilobytes, and they will only store the 20 latest events recorded by each device. So as you can see, this is a config XML files content for the motion sensor. Here we have the occurrence timestamp, which is when this event occurred. We have the event type, which is in this case motion detection, and we have the storage timestamp, which is the timestamp that this information was pushed to the Xiaomi cloud services or within the config XML. Moving on to the Mi door and window sensor, the same information can be found within the config XML of this device. The only difference here is the event type. Next, we have the wireless switch. Again, the only different information here is the event type. And if we would like to take a closer look of how this information appears within the application, here you have it. Next, we have the Mi humidity and temperature sensor. For this device, the config XML file has not a fixed size and can grow based on cast data. So before turning the airplane mode on for this device, we need first to navigate through the application and tap on either of the temperature or humidity button. This will allow the information to be pulled from the Xiaomi cloud service and be available for later passing within the config XML file. Now, if we tap on the temperature button, we will retrieve the days, weeks, and months measurements respectively. If we skip this step, we will have to rely on the cast data, on the data that was cast previously by the user. And how the config XML file looks like for this device, here we can see the config XML file's content about the month statistics. Next, we have the Mi Control Hub. Now, this device is considered the heart of the Xiaomi IoT security system. Now, the Mi motion sensor, the Mi door and window sensor, and the Mi wireless switch. All of these devices communicate with this device via Zigbee protocol and alert the user on various notifications. So the config.xml file in this case stores specific information about this device, including the guard status, is it enabled or disabled, the guard settings, the device that are currently paired with a control hub, and the alert log. Now, if we open the config.xml file for this device, we can see that the guard status is off, the latest cast log appears here, and if we would like to see how the rest of the alert log looks like, we have to tap on the alert log, and we can see that these records are stored within the config.xml file. Moving on, we have the Mi Robot Vacuum. Unfortunately, no config.xml file was found for this device, but under the databases directory, there is a SQLite database which is named RK Storage. Under the Catalyst local storage table of this device, we will find important information, like when was the device first used and the last cleaning time and area in square meters. Now, sorry about that. But most importantly, we can retrieve the map information about from this device. So as you can see here, we have a base 64 encoded PNG file, which when decoded will reveal the map that this device has scanned. Now, if we compare this map with our home layout, we will see that it is pretty accurate with only 2 exceptions. Of course, the device isn't to blame for that, as my bedroom is higher than the ground, and the door that led to that office was closed during the first scan. Now, if you are familiar with these devices, you will know that the first scan is the most important, as it is then when this device creates the map of the smartphone. We can also retrieve the do not disturb settings of this device. One other artifact that is related to that device now. So under the databases directory, there is another SQLite database named TypeList. Within that database, we will find the latest notification from certain IoT devices and events. Now, the robot vacuum populates this database, and this is how you can get to where this notification lies from within the application. Now, if we open the params column, we will be able to recover some important information, including how much time was the robot vacuum working, which area did it covered, and we can also retrieve the Xiaomi API, which was deliberately deleted by me in this example. Now, what about the Mi Security Camera 360? Again, no config.xml file was found for this device, but under the App Media Camera, the unique device ID directory, we were able to retrieve the thumbnail that is viewable from within the application. This file had a temp extension, but had a JPG file signature. Now, any pictures or video saved while streaming through the device can be found under the DSIM/device ID directory. Most artifacts will typically reside in the SD card of the camera if one is used. But if the user has enabled the home surveillance assistant, now when this feature is on, the camera will detect motion, and record a small footage of that detection, which will then be pushed to the Xiaomi cloud server and will notify the user for this footage. Now, the user can interact with that footage. He can either view it, save it, or delete it. Now, if we have this feature enabled and the user has interacted with these recordings, another database will be populated. And that database's name is Media Camera Cloud Video. Now, I haven't fully determined under which circumstances does this database get populated, but I would like you to be aware of that information as well. Back to the previously mentioned typelist.tb, this smart camera also populates with notification the message record typelist table. And now let's move to the IoT Bluetooth devices. Now, for the Mi electric scooter, The config XML file stores specific information about this device, including the scooter serial number and the safety video view timestamp. Now, what does this safety video means? In order to use this scooter, you have to first view a safety video that is provided by Xiaomi. So this is the timestamp that the user chose to do so. No usage log was found for this device, and no other artifacts were found for this device in the application data. So in order to retrieve any artifacts that this device has stored, we have to examine this device live through the application. To do so, we had to turn on the Ethernet and Bluetooth connection and be in close proximity to that device. Next, we have to connect to the device through the Mi Home application. Now, if the device was found turned off, we can retrieve the odometer, which is essentially the total mileage that this device has covered. What is more, we can retrieve the scooter serial number and its firmware version. On the contrary, if the device was found turned on, which will be rarely the case, we will be able to recover the current trip odometer, which is the total distance that the device has covered since it was turned on. This information is really volatile and will be unavailable when turned off. We can also retrieve the average trip speed of that current trip. And now, our last device is my personal favorite. It's a Mi Smart Electric Toothbrush T500. I will begin with the bad news. No config XML file was found for this device, no other artifacts were found for this device, and this device had to be examined live through the application. Again, in order to be successful with that, we had to turn on the Ethernet connection and Bluetooth connections and to be in close proximity to that device. Next, we have to connect to the device from the Mi Home application. Now, the points that you see here in the 83 points were awarded to me for my brushing routine. So this device, using its sensors and some algorithms, it awards the user with points which are based on how good did he brush his teeth. Down here, we can see how many days are left before the replacement of header is needed. Sorry about that. Now, the most important step here that we have to do in order to retrieve the latest data that is stored within this device is to slide down. If we do not slide down this screen, we will not be able to recover the latest information that is stored within this toothbrush. So we will lose information ranging from 1 day to a couple of weeks, according to my test, or even more. So this is the most important step here. After we slide down to sync the latest data, we can then tap on the history button and we will get the day, weeks, and month measurements. Now, this is super important information. And why is that? We can use this information in various ways. For example, we can, oh my God, sorry about that. We can determine the health habits of our suspect. So does our suspect brush his teeth regularly or not? We can also place a person within another place. So for example, let's say we have an incident occurred in a home and our main suspect, the owner of this home, claims that he was out of his house during the incident. But the experienced investigator, after retrieving this valuable information from this silent witness, will be able to determine that a couple of minutes before the incident or a couple of hours before, the user had used his toothbrush. Of course, this is not enough in a real case scenario. We will need DNA and fingerprints forensics, of course, but, oh my God, sorry about that. But nonetheless, it is a really important information that needs to be carefully looked into. Now, I would like to close this slide with a quote. In this vast IoT multiverse that are live in this, in this vast IoT universe, a simple and small device like an electric toothbrush can provide information that can help the investigator crack a case or two. And this is where the magic lies in the IoT forensics realm. Now let me recap with my findings and points of consideration. So, Xiaomi IoT ecosystem is another under-researched field of IoT forensics, which can be really valuable in our current or future smart home investigations. The forensic analysis of Mi Home application can provide information about the smart home structure, the smart home automation system, smart home device logs and/or settings, and of course, the owner's personal information. And now, some points of consideration. Config XML files content depends on the device type. This means that for some devices, it may not exist. For some devices, it may only store settings or other information about the device. For some devices, it may store logs of the device. So most logs will, either the scene or device logs will reside in the cloud. This means that if you pull data from the cloud using the application, typically this data will remain available until you exit the application. So please consider taking pictures of the smartphone screen, as some of this information will be unavailable when internet connection is lost. If IoT Bluetooth devices are present, please make sure to connect to them, pull their data, and take pictures of that information. And now, to conclude, the first two references are super useful when it comes to IoT forensics. It is detailed research, and if you're interested in Xiaomi IoT forensics, I would suggest taking a thorough look into them. The third reference is my GitHub repository, where I have uploaded some Python scripts that will help you parse some of the previously mentioned files. I would like to express my special gratitude to my supervisor professor, Mr. Kostas Lazabrinoudakis from University of Piraeus, for his guidance and support throughout this research. If it wasn't for him, I would probably not be here today. And that is all for me. I hope you enjoyed this talk as much as I did, and I wish you all a great the second day of the SANS DFIR Summit. Jason, back to you.
Evangelos, wow, that was super impressive research. You know, so one of the things that as a, you know, I started out my career as a police detective, you know, before I got into digital forensics. And, you know, a number of the things that you've highlighted in your research, if that had existed back in those days as a detective, would have made my investigations just so much more fruitful. And I think, you know, I think what you've highlighted just really shows the way the world is changing, and, you know, the wealth of data that we actually have available to us in potential investigations going forward. So this was absolutely amazing. I think I need to get myself one of those smart toothbrushes now, so I can monitor my son's teeth brushing habits based on that. But you know, that you know, things like being able to place a person physically on a scene, you know, that's always been one of our big challenges, you know, in forensics. But if I could have that toothbrush, I could to the time tell you when you brushed your teeth, and I recover your DNA off the toothbrush. That places you on that scene at a particular point in time, quite amazingly. So Evangelos, we've got some questions that have come through on the Zoom channel. So the first one comes from Kent Cashding, and I hope I've pronounced your surname correctly, Kent. And he asked, did you observe any evidence of the Xiaomi IoT devices being used in distributed denial of service attacks at all?
I have seen one of the two references is from Black Hat DEFCON, where the researcher there had reverse engineered the vacuums and many of these devices. And he stated that they have been used in cybercrime cases. But other than that, I'm not sure that denial of service is specific to Xiaomi IoT devices. It is in general a drawback of the IoT devices, and especially their firmware, the outdated firmware. So I haven't experienced personally such a cybercrime case.
Cool. No, perfect. I have to just make a comment, because Chris Collier made a comment on the questions about go figure a DDoS attack by toothbrushes, you know. So I'm
So
sort of
many
having this,
toothbrushes. Yeah, yes.
this strange picture in my head of the attack of the toothbrushes kind of thing. But on a more sort of serious note, Rabbi Simon asked the questions like, can the logs be deleted or modified by the attackers? So those logs that are on the devices themselves, can they be deleted, or can those SQLite databases be actually modified by somebody on the system?
That would fall under the weaknesses of the Android operating system, I would assume. So that if you have a really Android 4, for example, 4.0 versions, then you are in high risk. But with Android 11 and 12, I believe that you're not in danger of that attacks. But it's not specific to the application itself. It's specific to the Android, the underlying operating system, I would say.
Yeah, and obviously somebody would have to understand the data structures within those SQLite databases as well if they did try to sort of falsify data and things along those lines. So that's awesome. There's some interesting conversations going on as well in your hallway, Evangela. So that's I think you'll be able to jump into that as well. I'm just checking the questions. I haven't seen any other questions, but yeah, I think just from my side, just in terms of like what what the research that you discussed, I think the integration of all these different devices just, is amazing. And like I said, you focused on Xiaomi, but if we look at all the other different sort of tech manufacturers and the sort of commoditization of electronics, I think we're going to see more and more of this taking place. One question I did want to ask, just in terms of the location of the servers, I know you said that most of the data was stored on the cloud. Are the Xiaomi services sort of servers spread around the world? Are they centralized in a particular geographic location? I'm just, again, as an investigator, I'm thinking about some of the potential legal challenges if we had to subpoena for information.
So they're spread around the world. So for Europe, for example, they are located in Germany, but it's not the case for the rest of the. So it is bind to where the server lies. It is all over the world, for example.
Okay.
To be absolutely correct about that.
Okay, perfect.
So,
Yeah, no, that. So it's really going to come down to tracking to what server you're connecting
exactly.
to, and things like that, and probably with normal.
Sorry to interrupt, but that will also affect which devices your application support.
Yeah.
So there are more challenges in that. But the good news are that the Xiaomi try to comply with the GDPR. So they tend to offer a copy of your data.
Okay.
It is a brand new feature. I still haven't got any answer from my request about the copy of my data, but it is really it's good news that they try to comply with the European law, and that I will believe give us more data to work on our forensic cases.
Yeah, so we could basically do almost like a sort of a Google takeout kind of approach from a cloud perspective.
My point.
Xiaomi infrastructure. That's pretty interesting. That gives us certain options as well from an investigation point of view. So that's brilliant. I haven't seen any other questions coming through yet on the presentation or on the Zoom question and answers. Like I said, lots of compliments and on your hallway. So I'm pretty sure everybody's sort of eager and waiting for you to jump into that channel to go
bring toothbrushes.
And bring toothbrushes. Bring lots of toothbrushes. I was shocked. I mean, I never even imagined in my wildest dreams that we would be looking at Internet of Things toothbrushes. So this is an interesting question from Niels Nielsen saying, how can you determine who used the toothbrush at a given time because the brush heads are interchangeable? That's a pretty good question.
Great question. I don't have a clue or an answer right now. But I would assume that watching at the timer, how many days you are left. By default, there are 90 days. So if you are close to 90, that means that this header was replaced sooner or later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that again is just an indication, because he may have several headers and send them.
It's another one of those investigative challenges that we have to face.
Exactly.
I think I'm wondering if Niels has worked as a lawyer sometime, because those sound like lawyer questions.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I joke, Niels. But yeah, those are, I mean, those are the
Those are
challenges.
indications. Indications. We need
Yeah,
to
they're
always
indications. Yeah.
validate. Yeah, and
I mean, one of the things that we always talk about in investigation is corroborating evidence. So, so
exactly.
the we're not just going to rely on any one single piece of
On a
evidence.
toothbrush, yeah, we need more data, but it's an
Yeah.
indication.
Yeah, and it's a pretty good indication.
Yeah.
I can think of a couple of cases where that might have actually come into play in my
So
career.
brush your teeth, people.
Yeah. Or as somebody said in your hallway, if you don't want to go to jail, don't brush your teeth. So
You'll go only to dentist then.
Yeah, Evangelist, that was really a brilliant presentation.
Thank
I
you very
thoroughly enjoyed it. I think the research that you've done has been a wonderful contribution to the community. Best of as a fellow PhD student to another fellow PhD student, I wish you the best of luck with your ongoing research.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I know a PhD research is never easy. Trust me, I've been struggling with my PhD now for a few years to get it finished. So well done. I mean, this research is really, really awesome, and the contribution you're making to the forensic community really can't be understated. So from my side and from SANS specifically, thank you very much.